Welcome everyone who's tuned in. I'm Caryn Franklin. I'm replacing John Boddy, who's not well. Unfortunately, he has COVID, and I'm thrilled to have an amazing panel lineup for you. So I'm just going to do a small intro of myself and an audio, and then I will pass to each of my speakers. So I have worked in commercial fashion for around 40 years, but I do have visiting academic positions, and my audio description is that I'm a white woman. I have long grey hair and dark rimmed glasses and noisy earrings. Max, over to you.
Thank you, Caryn. My name's Max Kandhola. I'm a senior lecturer at Nottingham, Trent University, and I also work as a fine art photographer. My audio description is I'm a British Punjabi Sikh, and I have a grey silver top knot, and I have red glasses.
Thank you, Max. I'll come to you, Mylinh.
Thank you, Caryn. So my name is Mylinh Nguyen. I am a senior lecturer of business studies for fashion and textiles at the University of Brighton. I'm also the inclusive practice co-lead. My audio description is identified as she, her. I'm a first generation British born Vietnamese, and I have black hair and a sharp black fringe.
Thank you, Mylinh. Jason.
Caryn, give me for a second. Right.
Thank you, Caryn. Hi, I'm Jason Forrest, course leader for the fashion marketing course at UWL. My pronouns are he, him, and also I have a silver beard, black male in a blue top.
Thank you. Sukaina, over to you.
Thank you, Caryn, and thank you all. I'm Sukaina from Solent University. I work for the library service there. I'm a brown, middle-aged lady of medium height, and I'm wearing a head covering. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jacob.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jacob Goff. I'm a menswear designer, and I am a lecturer on fashion design and marketing and MA performance wear at Northumbria University. I'm a mixed Nigerian, Indian and Caucasian heritage. I have a beard, black hair.
Thank you, Jason. So I'm really excited to be sort of spreading out some of the vocabulary and the language that we're hearing as the summit develops. We've had an amazing start, and the summit really does propose the idea of representation and belonging and cultural competency, specifically for white academics. And as we all understand, this is vital for the health and well-being of everybody in the building, but especially our minoritized academics and students. And we understand that we lose out when we are undermining people who bring diverse perspectives, who bring lived experience that informs how we understand the global marketplace. And we lose out when we don't have these exchanges. One of the things that FACE did in the early days was to create the See My Face survey. And this is downloadable from the website, the FACE website, under resources. It underlines for our students the psychological isolation, trauma, and which results in the way that they are able to work, but indeed the way that the room then functions. We've also spelt out at the launch of this summit with the film Disclosure by filmmaker Ricardo Barker, which is subtitled Voicing Our Truths. And this is minoritized academics speaking of the struggle to be authentic in the room, to bring the fullness, the richness of what they can contribute in a system that is still very structured and on some levels in denial. So those links will be on our website for you to have a look. And before we kind of continue with our questions, I want to remind all white academics tuning in that we do have an amazing associates group, Aligned to Face. We've been working for the past year on radical change together with all our members, and this summit is actually one of the projects that was proposed in group work and has been taken to an amazing conclusion. So thank you to Hal Davis at Central St Martin's, who has been the lead on this. I want to just read out one quote from one of the other associate members, and that's Linda Mackey, Programme Lead, MA Design Management at Winchester School of Art, who says, "It's been a privilege to work with the FACE community and create a safe space to discuss with fellow white academics what we can do to be accountable accomplices and how we can influence our own institutions to undertake next steps. It's not always easy, but with support we can find the motivation to keep on and continue repeating what we learned." So I want a sort of general perhaps question to our speakers of from a personal perspective, as minoritized academics, what does coalition and co-creation between Black, Brown and white academics feel like to you? You may all have different experiences. Does anybody want to go first? Give me a hand signal and I can bring you in. I haven't got one yet. Thank you, Jacob. Over to you.
I think, well, it's hard to answer whether I know what it looks like, because I'm not sure if it's happened in my experience yet. But from what I can imagine, we always talk about the infrastructure and of racist institutions needing to be broken down and rebuilt from the ground up in order for true change to happen. And in my experience, it feels like that infrastructure is actually tightening a little bit, and in a kind of defensive way. I have yet to see any experience in which the big changes have been made. So for me, coalition is actually white academics promoting that infrastructure coming down and a new one being built up, because it comes a lot from Black and Brown academics that needs to happen, but generally there's not the manpower from academics in each institution to be able to make that happen.
And so what you're talking about speaks to, and do the rest of my panelists put your hands up if you want to join in, but speaks to a denial and a discomfort about declaration of a deficit of knowledge and of an intention and ability to lead us, to take us to a different space. Mylinh, jump in.
I was going to say, so from my experience, it is having kind of white colleagues kind of take on that discomfort and not be afraid to have those conversations. What I want to kind of also say is kind of, I know I'm of a Vietnamese background, but it's taken me a while to realize, having, been brought up in a Western education system, to realize the perspective that I had been taught in, and to also from internally challenge those viewpoints. So and just not being afraid to have those conversations and to challenge those discomforts.
Thank you. And I think maybe to speak to, because if we're all in agreement, Jason, Sukaina, Max, do jump in, that we're not actually seeing the progress we want to see, could we project and say, what would it feel like to experience that stepping up of white academics in coalition to change the system, because at the moment it seems that there is, we've talked previously in other panels about the heavy lifting and the emotional labour that minoritized academics are kind of in an unspoken way, almost required to step up, as if, well, you know what's missing, so you can put it into the system. And that it creates a hard space as well to explain, you know, to educate and to bring along other white academics. Does anybody want to speak to that? What I would definitely, thank you, Jason. Just going to jump in there.
Okay, so sorry, I was just a little bit delay on unmuting my mic. I think that there's quite a few factors both that are linked with it, and one of them is fear. Fear of change, fear of the you know, the unknown. I think there's also elements such as which are inherently not addressed, which are around microaggressions, looking at unconscious bias and all those factors that go into it. So, and to be able to, and bearing in mind that we have been within institutions that are heavily colonialized, and the teaching behind that as well is rooted through a Eurocentric lens. So there's so many different, and even through the images, depending on what course you're doing as well, are also depicted through a Eurocentric lens. So I think there's a lot to unpack, but I do think there's an element of fear that I would say that's linked, that in relation, if I'm going back to your question and prompt about feeling, just to be specific.
Thank you. And I'm going to pick up on that, because I think there is a space that we have to name for white academics who somehow feel exposed by their lack of confidence, cultural competency, fluidity around vocabulary, and I would put myself as an example of someone who has learned a great deal from being part of FACE, and who has, in being able to listen to conversations, recognise where I've been complicit, recognise where there are now seemingly obvious deficits because it's been pointed out to me. I'm going to come to you, Max, and switch my microphone off because we're in the same room and we don't want to get any feedback. But thank you, Jason. That point of fear, that's a natural place to start with. But what if we replaced it by curiosity? What if we said, yeah, the brain is naturally fearful of the unknown. So I've got a little alert going off in my head, but what if I said, what can I learn here? What can, you know, help me progress apart from, you know, challenge the system, change the system? Max.
Thank you, Caryn. Just following on from what you've said, Caryn and Jason, I do agree with fear, uncertainty. I do think the content of the curricula is really problematic. In our previous FACE conversations, I've talked about the curricula generally before one enters university, at school, and what the government is outlining. So when you look at the curricula, which I will allude to later in terms of some of the examples I will present, there's a vast shortage of defined literature that's not just within art and design, but across the board. And it's not just sort of tagging the odd novel or artist here or there because they're flavour of the month, or due to traumatic events. I'll allude to George Floyd. Trauma adds to the heightened awareness and knowledge that one wants to engage with these topics, which actually after the trauma event, which actually doesn't end for many people, there's a drop, because you see in the reading list, the top of the top 10 reading list, I think, was Black authors, Black Asian authors, and then suddenly after a couple of years it's dropped down. I do think it is about the curricula, and it's about doing extensive research and redesigning the curricula, where you have colleagues from different backgrounds looking at what's needed to be taught. And this could be a period we don't have to go back too historically, but just looking at contemporary, looking from, say, even from the 60s and 70s. So if I look at a module guide or a module spec and the overall course context, it's 95%, if not more, embedded in white discourses and references, which is not appropriate within the broader internationalization of universities when we bring it in. Lots of students, I see it at Central St. Martin's here, and in my own university at Nottingham, Trent. What are we offering, and what's the currency of what we're offering, and are we listening to student voices that can inform the content and the delivery of the curriculum?
Thank you, Max. I'm going to bring Sukaina in here.
Yeah, thank you, Caryn. So I just want to make it very clear that I'm not an educator, but I facilitate rather in the education institution from a library point of view. And I have been involved in this project, which is all to do with diversifying the library collection. And this includes reading lists, as well as all the other collections in the library which students use. And diversifying and decolonizing, it's all to do with undoing and dismantling all the colonialist legacies that are there and that have shaped our curriculum. And the way, the curriculum is reflected out there, and it keeps on reproducing those legacies. And really what we need to do is to have this critical engagement with the existing curriculum and identify those marginal voices, identities and perspectives, that need to be heard and represented. And it really helps if the library can work together with academics and students, because this is how I've done it at our university at Solent, and I'm doing a presentation on this later. It is really three parties getting involved: the students, the academics, and the library. And there's so much more to be achieved when you work together. There is a lot more empathy that can come in, and that fear can be dissolved. And
Yeah,
there is just so much you can do together. Thank you.
I think there'll be stay on the space with your mic, Sukaina, because I'm looking at your project here, and I think there'll be a lot of interest into the those steps that can be taken, and how you actually move out of the space of looking at what may you feel an antiquated collection of references and wanting to bring in new. So tell us how you went about that.
Okay, so this is all covered in my presentation, but I'll go over it very quickly here for the benefit of all. So it all stemmed from the Race Equality Charter. What happened was in March 2020, Solent University, said we are going for the application for the charter, and I volunteered to represent the library service. And I was involved with other colleagues from other departments. There were academics as well from other support services. And this application was submitted. And during the process, what was identified has been an action plan. Although we have received our bronze charter mark from Advanced HE, but there's an action plan now to be followed. And the action plan clearly identified that we need to improve the equality, diversity, and inclusivity skills of both students and staff. And how do we go about doing that? And so the library has embarked on three things. One is creating an anti-racism guide. We are creating that guide to support both students and staff. And it's not only reading, there are videos there, there are podcasts there as well. And we've also gone down the route of diversifying our resources, as well as on the Solent University Library website. We've got a book suggestion form so that students and staff can request books that can help us diversify the collection. So we have done three things.
Thanks. Thank you, Sukaina, and I want to check something just as your stand-in chair. Have each of you got presentations that we're hoping to show during the time? Right, so let's speed through. And just bear in mind the time, guys, so I'm sorry if I've slightly extended the questions. Max, I'm going to come to you for your first one, please. And then Mylinh, if you can get ready to bring in your one.
Take me off my, okay. I can't see my slides now. There. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, right, okay. Bear with me. Share. Okay, I like to present Creative Changemakers competition. It was introduced last academic year. It was an initiative that was directed by our Deputy Dean, Natalie Brown, and involved various colleagues, Megan Wall, Amy Twigg, recently Zaina Rashid, and my colleague who's on the panel, Jason Forrest, who was part of Nottingham Trent University, and myself. This gave an opportunity to students to allow voices to be heard beyond the actual module and the curricula that was delivered. It was in its first year, we had approximately 25 students who presented for this award, and it allowed for personal shared experiences, lived experiences, very important in terms of how a student can articulate and bring their personal experience within the context of their photographic or fine art or in design, graphic design context. Since the participation and the opening of the award, we've now expanded the award. So we're allowing other courses, other courses, to be a part of it. I'll just go to my second slide. We had various titles for students to enter, and the entry was judged by a group of academics. And what we saw in this was work that was very personal, and it's almost like a lived journey, a diary that one could present and discuss within an open platform. The winners were all exhibited and the runners-up. And so, for example, one of the awards was a campaign award for anti-racist activity, presenting challenging narratives. And the winner was Manu Delaney from Fashion Communication. And she talks about her project advocates for anti-racism as it challenges the typical narrative. And that the work was presented as an exhibition. And also what it allowed to do is not just for Manu to present the work, but it opens up a broader dialogue within the university. My time at Nottingham Trent has been nearly 25 years. And in that period, my personal experience at the university has been one of support from many different academics who are there current and who have left, in terms of how I have navigated and maneuvered within the context of what I deliver and being part of the whole community. The other award was the Reach Out Award, working with external organizations, exploring diverse perspectives. And this was won by Marwa Ali, our international student, who talks about a series of portraits as a visual deception of my experience and life as a third culture kid. She has now gone on to begin her master's with us at Nottingham Trent University. Our other winners was a Focus Award, a specific project that draws on personal identity and heritage. This is Raphael Baldo, illustration, and he talks about the menstruation is still assumed to be highly gendered, women only experienced as a transgender man, as a person assigned female at birth who received a very poor education around sexual health. Again, in terms of the award, it's expanding the vocabulary, the dialogue, that one can be a part of a community within the context of education, but then present those experiences within a broader context to create a dialogue. And his packaging and posters were very well received. You can see an example here. And the other winner, we had influential award with social activism showing reach and impact. The winner is Lucy Collins, photography. Lucy Conversations, which is continued after graduation, is focused on encouraging people to have conversations to initiate focused on women's equality. Now, Lucy made these posters and she fly posted these in and around Nottingham and then rephotographed the posters. This is the award ceremony. It was put on social media, and there you have the various discussion points with our Dean Michael and Natalie. And the outcome of this, we're continuing the award in 2023. The outcome has been presented at various conferences. We've had criminology and law who have seen the work, who want to articulate their work through visual literacy in terms of showing the work. So that's a very interesting conversation to have in the future. And just to conclude, I talked about the reading list, and as one of the panelists was talking about looking at the library, and this is just a contemporary list. This is a few books of many books I have that I present to my students that deal with photography, visual culture. There's narratives, shared experiences from different groups of people from different backgrounds that I personally feel is fundamental within the context of the curricula. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Thank you. Oh, apologies. Thanks, Max. Let's move on to Mylinh, please.
Thank you. Just my apologies, Max. I think I threw your presentation out originally. So I have I wanted to talk about when my presentation's loading up, kind of what I've been doing at the University of Brighton and the steps that have been taking place. So there's lots of different steps, not necessarily working in silo. And say kind of the University of Brighton's got 9 academic schools, and the Fashion and Textiles department, which I work in, sits within the School of Art and Media. Are you able, is that slide showing? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see your first
Okay.
slide, Mylinh.
Oh, I can't see it, sorry.
I can't see it. I'm just
So
gonna.
we've got a quote from Charlie Clayton at.
Okay, so I'm just gonna. I will carry on, and if some can see it. So, like I said, I in addition to teaching business studies for fashion textiles, I'm also the inclusive co-lead. So I lead this with a colleague who teaches on visual communication. And so at the University of Brighton, we have an inclusive practice partnership scheme, and it's a university-wide initiative. I'm going to try and share it again. And it's to develop collaboration between student and staff partnership, and also to kind of mention the students are paid. It's a paid role that they've taken on. And the IPP scheme, it forms an important part of putting the students at the heart of what we do, which is the work stream, the university strategic plan. Perfect. And it contributes to kind of the targets within the Race Equality Charter Action Plan. And it uses student voice in partnership to enhance the education and student experience. So this has been going and running for 3 years now, and it's a 5-year kind of funded scheme. And I work in partnerships with students to review the representation of racial, ethnic and cultural identities and histories within the module content and delivery. So I've put a quote here from one of the student partners, Charlie Clayton. Someone from a Black, Asian, minority ethnic background, it gives me heart to see that lecturers are so enthusiastic to shape the curriculum so that's more accessible to people like myself. What's been really liberating about the scheme is that students have had the opportunity to speak to both the module leaders and the course leaders, and they feel really empowered to provide recommendations for change within the lecture content. And one of the most important outcomes within the scheme was to allow a dialogue to take place between the students and educators to kind of remove the hierarchy, which can often be placed within an educational institution. One of the lectures that a student looked at was identity and gender politics. And some of the recommendations and suggestions were to kind of look at other components of identity and the intersections that make up one's identity rather than gender in isolation. The student suggested to include a talk by Kimberly Crenshaw, Race, Gender, Equality and Intersectionality, and discuss the topics such as the notion of colour blindness as an unhelpful, harmful tool when dealing with issues around race and the false sense of living in a post-racial society. And when students present this, staff have found it really beneficial to take on the student partners' recommendations. And, you know, they kind of take on board what the students have come up with and they start to implement it into their module content for teaching into the next academic year. And in addition to this, so like I said, there's many things that kind of we've been doing. So working in parallel to the IPP scheme, we have created a blog called Crossing Cultures, and it's to provide a publishing platform for content, and it's to be developed by students and staff to include interviews. And as you can see, the FACE Summit has been as a place, as a resource for staff and students to use, and kind of for diverse, creative and cultural references. And finally, really grateful. So last year, Bill Tranji, so also a member of FACE, is the Equality and Diversity Advisor at the University of Brighton, and he invited FACE founder Sharon Lloyd and members Benita, Nada and myself to come and speak as part of Black History Month. And our session was titled Why She, He, They Need a FACE. It was a good opportunity to talk about kind of what FACE does and why it's really important to support the anti-racist agenda within the UK universities today.
Great, thank you, Mylinh. I'm going to bring Jason Forrest in straight away, and just to remind speakers, maybe just keep your eye on the clock so that we can get everybody in. So Jason, if you're there and you can deliver yours, and just apologies to everyone tuning in. I took over at short notice and just didn't realise you all had your presentation. So while Jason's getting his up, Sukaina, I'm going to ask if I can bring Jacob in after that, just because we got a little insight into your work, and I don't want to leave without us getting Jacob in. Jason, are you ready to go?
Yes, ready
Thank
to
you.
go. Can you let me know if you can see my slides, please?
We can.
Okay, fantastic. So let me just press start. I'm conscious of time and will definitely stick to the 8 minutes that we had. An interesting topic, actually, and question which I think really fosters so much debate and for everyone that's here. But reflecting on my own lived experience and also what that looks like in academia itself, I sort of reevaluated the question of, can white educators again decolonise the fashion curriculum? And I've come to the answer of, apart from the relevant people who are part of the FACE, and also people who are, I put no, but I put unless you're, Caryn Flankin, the great work that you've been doing for the FACE, also here at CSM, looking at the FACE allies. Any of you that know who Jane Elliott is a really influential character that links to addressing the inequalities around race itself, and also my new cohort and faculty within UEL. So I'm going to then move on to...
Have we got you, Jason? Your mic has gone quiet. So what I would say, Jacob, is just get your presentation ready if we've lost Jason for a moment there. Let's go into yours. Jason, I'm so sorry, but we cannot hear you and your screen has frozen. So Jacob, could you go into yours? Thank you.
Is that visible for you? Sorry.
Yes, it is.
Did the old muting trick. So I just wanted to, I'll quickly talk through a project that I did with level 4, that's first year students at Northumbria University on fashion design and marketing. It fell into a module that aimed to teach new students core practical skills associated with concepting, designing, making and promoting clothing. So I'm just going to start really briefly, give you an overview of the FDM course at Northumbria, that's fashion design and marketing. So it's BA and it offers students the opportunity to creatively explore fashion design, products and promotion for future markets. Rather than focusing on catwalk kind of fashion, students create brands and have to justify why they would exist in a market. I teach with 17 wonderful academics and technicians on this course, but yes, I am the only person of colour that teaches on it. So this brief I'm talking about today was designed to aid level 4 students develop their understanding of using research to inform conceptual design development, garment construction and creative promotion. They were to learn the importance of combining personal heritage with historical influences on contemporary design to form the basis of their research and progress their ability to articulate and communicate their ideas. Practically, that meant they were asked to research themselves and their heritage, whatever that may be, to design a 3-look print-based collection. And the idea behind this was that we wanted to cultivate an open and honest kind of community within the new cohort that came in, that were happy to talk to each other about themselves. So this idea came directly from speaking to members of FACE, including John Boddy, who was to be our host, who I spoke to, or spoke once about his institution's otherness and belonging core skills modules that they put together as part of decolonising their curriculum. This specifically was about the importance of exploring identities and talking about cultural experiences in academic situations. It's not uncommon for Northumbria cohorts to consist of about 98% white students. However, it's my belief that encouraging these classes to speak about their backgrounds contributes to a cultivation of an open and honest atmosphere that is welcoming of other cultural representations in the future. Luckily, when I started teaching this brief, however, I was pleased to see it was the most multicultural class that I'd ever taught in my academic career. Just really quickly, another aspect of the design culture that was important was improved environmental impact in the fashion industry. So we were looking at upcycling, and as that's a big topic for students these days who like to get involved with doing. Specifically for this project, and the reason it was called ID Lab is that we were donated around 30 lab coats that were heading for landfill by our colleagues over at the Health and Life Sciences Department. Students were given one each in different levels of condition, most of them covered in chemicals, but I have to stress they were boil washed, so there's nothing dangerous happening. And they also were given 1 to 2 meters of end-of-life screen print backing cloth to use within their garment. They were asked to develop a print that represented the research they had done into their heritage. And each garment was made of about 95 to 100% recycled materials. So I'm just going to finish by showing you some examples of student work from this project. This student, who was from Nigeria but was brought up in Spain, wanted to combine those elements of her life. So she used digital print skills, she used digital prints to create a homage to her family and herself, and using childhood photos to inform silhouettes, and even ultimately creating the garments for her, by her, and modelling them herself. And this student took a similar approach. She was also of Nigerian heritage, but was brought up in Lake Como, Italy. and she chose to use collaging to influence the direction of the project, and embroidered over Italian Renaissance paintings that she digitally printed. She embroidered black people to take the spaces of those figures, which I thought was a nice idea. Finally, this project culminated in the exhibition held in the foyer of Northumbria's design school. From a personal point of view, my mission with the project was to be able to cultivate a sense of community within the cohort through the sharing of stories, regardless of cultural differences. The highlight of teaching this brief was absolutely being able to sit with students and hear them talk about their different heritage with each other, when otherwise, especially at level 4, they may have been too shy to do so. I'd like to hope that the project instilled a sense of bonding within the class and an advanced notion of understanding and ultimately respect for one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob, for that. And again, sorry we lost you, Jason. I don't know if you're ready to pick up, and then Sukaina after that, so that we can get you. I think we have another 15 minutes. We started late, didn't we? No, we have 10 minutes. Yeah.
Apologies about that. I don't know what happened with the connection. But I'm going to carry on from where I had just finished off. So the focus really, picking back on what I initially said in relation to addressing the question, is really focusing on an inclusive curriculum that's been, and again, providing equal opportunities for all our students within my previous employer at NTU, but also at the University of East London that I'm part of. And I think that the notion of looking at the quote from Bell Hooks, which any called radical pedagogy must insist that everyone's presence is heard, is something that really underpins my current teaching practice across fashion, 3-year course within fashion marketing. So we've had the unfortunate incident with George Floyd, which was the catalyst of actually what made me think about how we can incorporate societal issues within the curriculum. And then also looking at how, from a fashion marketing perspective, how this could be, we could create a concept around that for students, and collaborating with, which I think is a really important notion to be linked with, of engaging consumers around societal issues, but also getting them to nominate change makers was one of the major themes behind this brief that our level 4 students had put together, which was then resulted in an exhibition space, which was exhibited within an atrium area of the at Nottingham Trent University. And as Max had mentioned earlier, this then went on to become something that was much bigger, and building awareness around, you know, the notion of the importance of representation and diversity, but also having looked at, you know, the fundamental aspects of where it actually started from an initial concept and idea, but then how this could potentially have the possibility of this being developed across the whole university itself. So that was great in one aspect. But the main point that I wanted to sort of really end on is sort of like looking at visibility and the state of like being heard and seen and listened to. And I think that's a really important factor for putting together guest talks for our students moving forward, industry-based projects. And what I want to leave on is just a sort of a video that I've been put together, which is with the Fashion Minority Report, just looking at the information of what those students have gained from addressing the topic of minority groups and inclusion within the project, which was set by Daniel Peters for Fashion Minority Report. I hope you can all see this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we can.
We had the greatest opportunity to work on the FMR project with Daniel Peters, and it's been a great experience expressing in the narrative.
Bell Hooks says that any radical pedagogy must insist that everyone's presence is acknowledged. Our presentation was a great opportunity to create a platform to raise awareness for neurodiversity, and we hope this could see future brands and companies develop their own approach to this.
all around today has been a really insightful, productive day. I've learned a lot on this project, really enjoyed working on it. Yeah.
It's been insightful. Hashtag out creatives. Yay.
Hello, we're Points of Difference. We presented to Daniel Peters. Our unique selling point is that we are creating a space for young ethnic minority creatives and to help them with getting into the industry.
Hi, we're ASL, Alice, Sophie and Lauren, and our group project was based around feminism. We really enjoyed working with a live client because it gave us a feel of what real industry is going to be like.
We really enjoyed working on this project and we feel that we've managed to take valuable skills that we can use in the industry.
Hi there, we are the Internationals and we are very lucky to work with FMR on this fantastic project. We managed to actually explore quite in depth how to help minorities in our own countries coming from Spain and Poland, and was very insightful to just learn so much about the communities that normally are overlooked.
Yeah, I personally learned a lot about what I can do in my country to have an impact on it.
Thank you, FMR and Daniel.
Hi, we are SCK. We've just presented to Daniel Peters at Fashion Minority Project report.
Our project was based on a collaboration with UEL and FMR. It was a really great opportunity for us to present in front of industry professionals and get feedback on all of our work.
We have a great time and we're really thankful to Daniel for this opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, that's where I'll end my presentation for now.
Right, thank you. And as Sharon commented, how wonderful it was to hear the joy and enthusiasm in the voices of your students. And Sukaina, can I bring you in so that we can move through your how-to?
Okay, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to cut it short really because I have mentioned some of the things there. So I worked on this project from the library side, diversifying library resources at Solent University. And as I mentioned earlier on, it all started with the Race Equality Charter where I was involved from the library side, representing the library. And the application was submitted. And as I mentioned once again earlier, that Solent has been awarded the Bronze Award, and this application identified many things, and there's a great action plan for it to move forward with it. And the library is following up on 3 things. So the first thing is the anti-racism guide, and this guide, it is hoped that with this guide, it will encourage conversations in the Solent community and progress understanding of the detrimental effects of racism on staff and students. And it will also provide guidance and what one can do to stand up against racism and be an anti-racist ally. But my main focus today is going to be on this. So this is a staff guide on diversifying reading lists. So I was involved from the library side, again, with a group of students and academics, and how we have taken our steps on this guide is that we are going to see how we evaluate reading lists from now onwards. Who are the dominant voices? Whose narratives are there in the reading lists? Also, whose perspectives and voices are excluded from the reading lists? Are the texts all Eurocentric or Western-centric? Are the majority of authors on the reading list the same gender and ethnicity? Who is talking about whose culture or experience? And what kinds of resources do we perceive to be of most academic value and why? So all this critical approach is required to the curriculum. And the final slide is on the book suggestions form. The library has also got a book suggestions form, and staff and students are welcome to suggest any resources that they would like the library to purchase so as to diversify the collection. Sorry, this was a whistle stop and I hope you've got something from this presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sukaina. You did marvellously for us to bring this into time. And I think if there's a common thread in everything that everyone has said, it is the face kind of emblematic power, purpose, privilege, position, and the way in which we can all use what we have to we pay attention to the area of race inequality, and to then create the motivation for intention. And that's really what we're asking here, is that all the academics, thank you so much for joining in, that you might also want to join FACE to broaden your learning and your conversation and your confidence, and be supported in that space. And just on a final position, one academic said, an academic of colour said, at last he felt that he wasn't the only person in the room, or that, you know, as some of our academics have said, they are the only academics in the room, but when a white academic steps up in coalition, it doesn't feel like it. So thank you very much to Mylinh, to Jacob, to Jason and Sukaina, and also to Max for an amazing session. And thank you to all the academics who have listened in. You'll find resources on the weareface.uk website, specifically the See My Face survey, and the projects that the associates are also doing to progress curriculum, assessment and critical theory. So thank you very much from all of us today. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, talkers.